I'm leaving you and moving to Los Angeles with my 22-year-old girlfriend. I've already cleaned out our shared account, LOL. I stared at the text message on my phone, sitting in my home office in Austin, Texas, on what had started as a perfectly ordinary Tuesday afternoon. The words seemed to blur together for a moment, before the reality hit me. 15 years of marriage, reduced to a text message with a laughing acronym at the end. My name is Amanda Griffin. I'm 41 years old, and I work as a financial advisor for Sundale Financial. For the past decade and a half, I thought I was building a life with Trevor, my husband, of what I believed was a solid marriage. We had our beautiful house in one of Austin's most desirable neighborhoods, joint savings accounts, retirement plans, and what I thought were shared dreams for the future. But as I read that text message again, I felt something unexpected wash over me. Not devastation, not shock. Instead, I felt a strange sense of calm, almost like relief. Because while Trevor thought he was delivering a crushing blow, he had no idea what he had actually just walked into. I set my phone down on my mahogany desk, next to the stack of legal documents I had been reviewing just moments before his text arrived. The irony wasn't lost on me. There, spread across my workspace, were asset protection papers, trust documents, and financial statements that told a very different story than what Trevor believed he knew about our finances. 3 months ago, I had started noticing things. Credit card charges at expensive restaurants when Trevor claimed to be working late. Receipts for jewelry that I never received. Phone calls that ended abruptly when I walked into the room. The classic signs that every financial advisor warns their clients about when discussing asset protection during marital difficulties. But I'm not just any financial advisor. I specialize in helping clients protect their wealth from exactly the kind of situation I found myself in. So when the red flags started appearing, I didn't confront Trevor with tears and accusations. Instead, I did what I do best. I protected my assets. I picked up my phone and typed back a simple response. Best wishes. Then I smiled. Trevor had always underestimated me, treating my career as some cute hobby rather than recognizing that I managed portfolios worth millions of dollars. He never paid attention to the complex financial structures I created for my clients, never bothered to understand the sophisticated asset protection strategies I implemented daily. What he was about to discover was that his wife wasn't just good at protecting other people's money. I had been protecting ours too, just not in the way he thought. I leaned back in my leather chair and thought about how we had gotten to this point. Trevor and I met 16 years ago at a barbecue hosted by mutual friends. He was charming, confident, and worked in commercial real estate. Back then, I was just starting out at Sundale Financial, eager to prove myself in a male-dominated industry. Our courtship was traditional and sweet. Trevor would surprise me with flowers, take me to nice dinners, and talk about building a future together. When he proposed after a year of dating, I felt like I was living in a fairy tale. We bought our house 2 years later, a stunning 4-bedroom in Tarrytown, with mature oak trees and a view of downtown Austin in the distance. For years, everything seemed perfect. We hosted dinner parties, took vacations to Europe, and talked about starting a family someday. Trevor's real estate business was doing well, and my career was steadily climbing. We pooled our resources, opened joint accounts, and made what I thought were mutual financial decisions. But looking back now, I could see the subtle signs I had missed. Trevor always deferred to my expertise when it came to investments and long-term planning, but he never seemed genuinely interested in understanding our financial picture. He would nod along when I explained portfolio allocations or tax strategies, but his eyes would glaze over. I thought he trusted my judgment. Now I realized he simply didn't care, as long as money was available when he wanted it. The first real crack in our marriage appeared about 18 months ago. Trevor started working longer hours, claiming he was pursuing bigger commercial deals. He became secretive about his phone and protective of his laptop. When I suggested we update our estate planning documents, he kept postponing the appointment with our attorney. Then came the spending changes. Our joint credit card statements showed charges I didn't recognize. Expensive dinners at restaurants we had never been to together. Hotel stays in Dallas when Trevor claimed he was meeting clients locally. When I asked about these expenses, he became defensive, accusing me of not trusting him and being too controlling about money. That's when my professional instincts kicked in. In my work, I had seen too many cases where one spouse discovered their partner was planning to leave only after significant financial damage had been done. Retirement accounts emptied, properties sold without proper documentation, credit lines maxed out. I had helped countless clients rebuild their lives after such betrayals, and I had learned to recognize the warning signs. So 3 months ago, when Trevor's behavior became undeniably suspicious, I made a decision. I would protect myself the same way I protected my clients. Quietly, methodically, and completely legally. The process of protecting our assets began with a simple phone call to my attorney, Patricia Walsh, who specialized in family law and asset protection. Patricia had been a friend since law school, and I trusted her completely. Over lunch at a quiet cafe downtown, I explained my suspicions about Trevor's behavior. "Amanda, you're right to be proactive," Patricia said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "Too many people wait until it's too late to protect themselves." "What exactly are you thinking?" I outlined my plan. We would establish irrevocable trusts to hold our major assets, including the house, our investment portfolios, and my retirement accounts. Since I had been the primary income earner for the past 5 years due to my success at Sundale Financial, and since Trevor had been financially dependent on my earnings for most of our major purchases, we had legal grounds to structure these protections. The key, Patricia explained, is that these aren't hidden assets. Everything will be properly documented and completely legal. We're simply ensuring that marital property is protected from dissipation or fraudulent transfer. Over the next 2 months, we systematically moved assets into protected structures. The house, which had been purchased primarily with my income and was titled in both our names, was transferred to a trust with me as the primary beneficiary. Our investment accounts, which totaled nearly $800,000, were restructured into protected trusts. My retirement accounts, worth over $400,000, were secured with additional beneficiary protections. The beauty of the strategy was that Trevor never noticed. He had never paid attention to our financial statements, always leaving the boring money stuff to me. When bank statements arrived, I reviewed them. When investment documents needed signatures, I handled them. Trevor's disinterest in our financial details, which had once frustrated me, now worked perfectly in my favor. We left only the joint checking account untouched, keeping about $15,000 for monthly expenses. To Trevor, this account represented our entire financial picture. He had no idea that it was barely a fraction of our actual wealth. During this time, Trevor's behavior became even more erratic. He started talking about needing space and mentioned taking a solo trip to Los Angeles to explore new business opportunities. He bought new clothes, joined an expensive gym, and began working out obsessively. The signs were all there, but I simply continued with my daily routine, processing financial documents and meeting with clients while secretly securing our future. 3 weeks ago, Trevor announced he was taking that Los Angeles trip. He was gone for a week, during which time I completed the final asset protection documents. When he returned, he was distant and distracted, barely making conversation over dinner. I knew something was coming. What I didn't expect was that he would be so careless about how he delivered the news. A text message. After 15 years of marriage, a text message with internet slang. Now, as I sat in my office reading his message for the 3rd time, I realized that Trevor had just made the biggest financial mistake of his life. I spent the rest of that Tuesday afternoon working as if nothing had happened. I reviewed client portfolios, returned phone calls, and attended a team meeting about quarterly performance metrics. My colleagues at Sundale Financial had no idea that my personal life had just imploded via text message. Around 6 p.m., my phone started ringing. Trevor's name appeared on the screen, but I let it go to voicemail. Then he called again. and again. By the fifth call, I decided to answer. "Amanda, we need to talk." Trevor's voice was tense, lacking the confident smugness I had expected. "I thought your text message was quite clear," I replied calmly, still sitting at my desk. "You're leaving for Los Angeles with your girlfriend. You've taken our money. What else is there to discuss?" "Look, I know this is sudden, but I've been unhappy for years. This isn't just about Madison. She's just helped me realize what I want in life. I deserve to be happy, Amanda. We both do." Madison, so that was her name. I made a mental note while keeping my voice steady. "I understand. I hope Los Angeles works out for you." The silence on his end stretched long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Finally, Trevor spoke again, and now I could hear confusion in his voice. "You're taking this awfully well. I thought you'd be more upset." "What would you like me to say, Trevor? That I'm devastated? That I'm going to beg you to stay? We're both adults. If you've found someone who makes you happier, then you should be with her." Well, yes. I'm glad you're being mature about this. I was worried you might try to make things difficult. I almost laughed at that. If only he knew how difficult things were about to become for him. "I have no interest in making anything difficult. You've made your choice, and I respect that. When are you planning to leave?" "Actually, I'm already in Los Angeles. I flew out this morning after I sent you that text. Madison and I are looking at apartments in West Hollywood. It's incredible out here, Amanda. The weather, the opportunities, the lifestyle. I should have done this years ago." So he was already gone. Already spending our money, or so he thought. "That sounds wonderful. I'm happy for you both. There's one thing, though." Trevor's voice took on a more serious tone. "I'll need access to our other accounts. The joint checking account I cleared out was great for initial expenses, but we'll need more for a deposit on a decent place and to get established out here." And there it was, the moment I had been waiting for. "What other accounts, Trevor?" Another long pause. "What do you mean? What other accounts?" "Our savings, our investment accounts, the money market account, all of it. I know you handle the financial stuff, but I'm entitled to half of everything." I smiled, grateful that he couldn't see my face through the phone. "Trevor, I'm not sure what you're referring to. We have the joint checking account, which you said you've already emptied. As for other accounts, well, those are held in various trusts and protected structures for tax and estate planning purposes. Surely you remember signing those documents." "What documents? What are you talking about?" "The trust documents, the asset protection papers, the estate planning updates. We discussed all of this, remember? You said you trusted my judgment with the financial planning and that you didn't need to worry about the details." I could hear Trevor's breathing becoming more rapid. "Amanda, I need access to that money. I need it now." "I'm afraid that's not how trusts work, Trevor. Those assets are protected and can't be arbitrarily distributed. Perhaps you should consult with an attorney about your options." The next morning, I woke up in my beautiful, now legally protected house and went through my normal routine. Coffee, news, shower, dressed for work in my favorite navy suit. It was Wednesday, and I had a full schedule of client meetings ahead of me. My phone had been buzzing all night with calls and texts from Trevor, but I had turned it to silent mode. When I finally checked it over breakfast, I found 17 missed calls and a string of increasingly frantic text messages. "Amanda, call me back now. This is ridiculous. I need access to our money. You can't do this to me. We're married. I know you're just trying to punish me. This is childish. Madison and I are stuck in a hotel. Do you know how expensive LA is? Call me back or I'm getting a lawyer." I deleted the messages without responding and headed to work. At Sundale Financial, I had a busy morning reviewing portfolios for 3 high-net-worth clients. Ironically, one of them was going through a divorce and needed advice on protecting assets from a spouse who had been secretly draining their accounts. I was able to speak from recent personal experience about the importance of proactive financial planning. Around lunchtime, my assistant buzzed my office. "Amanda, there's a Trevor Griffin on line 2. He says he's your husband and it's urgent. Please tell him I'm in meetings all day and cannot take personal calls during business hours," I replied. "If he continues calling, please inform him that he can reach me through my attorney." An hour later, Patricia Walsh called. "Amanda, I just got an interesting call from a lawyer in Los Angeles named Bradley Henderson. Apparently he represents your husband now. He was asking about the asset protection structures we put in place." "That was fast. What did you tell him?" "The truth. That all assets were properly transferred into legal trust structures over the past 3 months, with proper documentation, and your husband's implied consent. I also mentioned that since Trevor never objected to these arrangements during the planning process, and since they were established well before any divorce proceedings, they're completely valid." What was his response? He tried to argue that Trevor wasn't aware of the full implications of what he was signing. I reminded him that ignorance of legal documents that one signs is not grounds for invalidating them, especially when the spouse in question actively chose not to participate in financial planning discussions. I smiled. Trevor had always been proud of his hands-off approach to our finances, bragging to friends that he was lucky to have a wife who handled all the boring money stuff, so he didn't have to worry about it. That attitude was now working against him in spectacular fashion. "There's more," Patricia continued. "Mr. Henderson mentioned that Trevor is currently staying in a hotel in West Hollywood that costs $400 a night. Apparently he and his girlfriend expected to be living in luxury by now." $400 a night? How long can $15,000 last at that rate? Not long, especially when you factor in meals, car rental, and all the other expenses of relocating to one of the most expensive cities in the country. I'd estimate Trevor has maybe 2 weeks before he's completely broke. That afternoon, I received an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line read, "From Madison." Curious, I opened it. "Dear Amanda, I know this is awkward, but Trevor told me you're being unreasonable about the divorce settlement. I just want you to know that we're not trying to hurt you. We're in love, and we want to start our new life together. Can't you please just let us have what we need to be happy? Trevor says you have plenty of money and this won't even affect you. Please consider being generous. Madison." I stared at the email for a long moment, then deleted it without responding. By Friday of that week, the situation had escalated dramatically. Patricia called me at work with an update that made me glad I was sitting down. "Amanda, Trevor's attorney filed an emergency motion for temporary spousal support and access to marital assets. They're claiming financial hardship and arguing that you've hidden assets to prevent him from accessing his fair share of the marital estate." "Can they do that?" "They can try, but they have several problems. First, all the asset transfers were completed months before Trevor announced he was leaving, which demonstrates that this wasn't done in anticipation of divorce. Second, Trevor had full knowledge of our financial planning activities and chose not to participate. Third, and most importantly, he emptied the only jointly held account and explicitly stated in writing that he was taking the money and leaving." I thought about Trevor's text message, still saved on my phone. So his own text message works against him? Absolutely. When someone declares they're leaving and that they've cleaned out the shared account, it's hard to argue later that they're being denied access to marital funds. He literally bragged about taking the money. That evening, my phone rang again. This time it was a number I didn't recognize with a Los Angeles area code. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Amanda, this is Madison. Please don't hang up." Her voice was young, nervous, and carried a slight southern accent. I remained silent, waiting for her to continue. "Look, I know you probably hate me, and I understand that. But Trevor is really struggling right now. Our hotel kicked us out yesterday because his credit card got declined. We're staying at a motel now, and it's really scary. Trevor says you're doing this to punish him. but I just don't understand why you won't help us." "Madison," I said calmly, "I'm curious about something. How long have you and Trevor been together?" "About 6 months. We met at a real estate conference in Dallas. Trevor was so charming and sophisticated, nothing like the guys my age. He told me he was in an unhappy marriage and that you two were already basically living separate lives." 6 months. Trevor had been planning his exit strategy for half a year, while I had been planning my asset protection strategy for 3 months. The timeline was becoming clearer. "Did Trevor tell you about our financial situation?" "He said you were wealthy, that you had investments and property worth millions. He said once he left you, we'd be able to live really well in Los Angeles. He promised we could get a nice apartment in Beverly Hills, and that I could focus on my acting career without worrying about money." I felt a pang of sympathy for this young woman who had been fed the same lies I had been living with for months. "Madison, I need to ask you something, and I hope you'll be honest with me. Did Trevor ever mention that our money was held in trusts?" "What are trusts?" "He just said you handled all the financial stuff and that he'd get his share when he divorced you. He made it sound simple." So Trevor hadn't just lied to me about the affair. He had also lied to Madison about his ability to access our assets. She genuinely had no idea what kind of financial situation they were actually in. "Madison, I think Trevor may have misled you about several things. The money he took from our joint account is likely all he'll have access to. The rest of our assets are legally protected and cannot be simply withdrawn or divided." The silence on her end stretched so long I thought she had hung up. Finally she spoke, and her voice was much smaller than before. "Are you saying we're broke?" "I'm saying Trevor should have been more honest with you about our actual financial arrangements." The following Monday morning, I was reviewing quarterly reports when my assistant informed me that Trevor was on line 1, calling from yet another Los Angeles number. "Amanda, this has gone far enough." His voice was strained, lacking any of the confident arrogance from his initial text message. "I need money, and I need it now. Madison and I are living in my rental car. Do you understand that? We're homeless." I set down my pen and leaned back in my chair. "Trevor, I'm sorry to hear about your difficulties, but I'm not sure how I can help you. You made your choice to leave our marriage and move to Los Angeles. These are the consequences of that choice. Don't give me that. You deliberately hid our money to spite me. You planned this whole thing. I protected marital assets through legal estate planning structures, just as I do for my clients every day. You had every opportunity to participate in those discussions, but you chose not to. You said, and I quote, that you trusted my judgment with financial matters. I want a divorce, Amanda, but I want my fair share. Then file for divorce, Trevor. But understand that the assets you're referring to are no longer marital property in the traditional sense. They're held in irrevocable trusts with specific distribution requirements. What does that mean? It means you should have paid attention during our financial planning meetings instead of watching television. It means you should have read the documents you signed instead of dismissing them as boring paperwork. The silence stretched between us before Trevor spoke again, and this time his voice was desperate. Amanda, please. I made a mistake. Madison left me yesterday. She said this isn't what she signed up for and flew back to Dallas. I'm alone, I'm broke, and I don't know what to do. Best wishes, Trevor. I hung up the phone. 2 weeks later, I received the divorce papers Trevor had filed in Los Angeles. Patricia reviewed them with obvious amusement during our meeting at her downtown Austin office. He's asking for spousal support, half of all marital assets, and damages for what he calls financial manipulation and deceit, Patricia said, flipping through the documents. His attorney is arguing that you deliberately concealed assets to prevent him from accessing his fair share. What are our chances? Excellent. Trevor's own text message acknowledging that he cleaned out your shared account demonstrates that he had access to marital funds and chose to take them when he left. The fact that he didn't understand the full scope of your financial planning doesn't invalidate the legal structures we created. Patricia pulled out a thick folder. I've prepared our response. We're counterfiling for divorce here in Austin, where we have jurisdiction since this is where you reside and where the marital home is located. We're also requesting that Trevor return the $15,000 he took from the joint account, plus interest. Can we actually get that money back? Probably not, but it establishes our position that he was the one who inappropriately accessed marital funds, not you. A month later, Trevor called one final time. His voice was different now, defeated and hollow. Amanda, I'm coming back to Austin. I can't afford to stay in Los Angeles anymore, and my attorney says the divorce will be easier to resolve if we're in the same state. That's your choice, Trevor. I want you to know that I understand now what you did. It was brilliant, actually. I completely underestimated you. I simply protected our assets the way I protect my clients' assets every day. You chose not to pay attention to that process. Can we work something out? Some kind of settlement that doesn't leave me with nothing? Talk to your attorney, Trevor. All communication should go through legal channels now. I hung up and went back to my work, feeling truly free for the first time in months. 6 months after Trevor's text message, our divorce was finalized. He received a small settlement, enough to start over, but nowhere near the millions he had expected. I kept the house, most of our investments, and my independence. As I sat in my home office that had become the center of my careful planning, I reflected on how strategic patience had been far more powerful than any emotional reaction could have been. Sometimes the best revenge is simply being better prepared than those who underestimate you.